Turkish bus stations are much like airports in Europe, and here's why it's actually extremely interesting from a global mobility standpoint, and why it may not be as problematic as you may think. While I don't believe it does anything other than optics, there is security checks. There is a lot of places, right, that you have to go through, but you do have to get your items scanned, and they may ask you for your passport at any point throughout the security check, and this is entirely legal. In Turkey, you should give your passport if they ask. Now, obviously, if a store owner asks, it's at your own discretion, but if the police ask, do not try to make their lives any harder than they already are, because they will make your life more harder than it already is. So, regardless, with that being the case, I am presently in a cafe drinking some Turkish tea. Absolutely love this stuff. And essentially, what you get in these places, right, where you are setting up for a bus ride or whatever else in Turkey, and something that's very interesting. You get a large open area where essentially you are set up to where it's much like an airport. I'm looking around my environment, and obviously you can see sort of the totality of why it looks like an airport and how it looks like an airport. And of course, this is something that is very different from a bus station in, say, the US or Europe, where often there are not security checks. No one cares what you bring onto the bus or off the bus. But in Turkey, they're often a little bit more concerned about security, a little bit more concerned about seeing every single passenger that runs through. Now, I'll go over why that's not necessarily actually helping anything in a new video, and I'll tie it back into the US. So, of course, if you're looking for those sorts of insights, feel free to click that subscribe button down below. And, of course, irrespective, if anyone is listening to the music, please do not copyright strike me. If you are obviously using it because it's public use, I presume. Jokes aside, essentially what you get with Turkey is a very security-oriented society where police are visible everywhere, security forces are visible everywhere, military is visible everywhere. Now, there's a law in Turkey where I cannot record police, I cannot record military, so I can't really give you an insight, right, into their operations because it's illegal, and of course I'm not going to break the law to make my points. However, if you come to Turkey, be prepared to carry around an identity document, be prepared to be stopped, be prepared to be searched, as all of this is legal in Turkey, and realistically it shows throughout the country, but specifically in bus stations, it shows extremely clearly. Now, some of the smaller bus stations, for example, Esenler in Istanbul, I don't think I went through any stops. Gerikale, places like this, and even during the night, if you're going in during the night, no one's gonna care what you're doing, how you're doing it. You're often going to be welcomed into the place without any security checks, and that's because, of course, there's not enough people for them to run security checks, and that's another reason as to why it's not that effective, but we'll go into that more in detail, of course, on a future video. That said, essentially what you get in Turkey is a very, I guess, show of force culture, where every single part of the process, you're going to see force, you're going to see guns, you're going to see sidearms, tasers, stuff like this. And it's mostly used as a deterrent, right? instead of being reactive, they're proactive. So they have large guns. They have, place things strapped to their chest and so forth. So, of course, if you are in a society that doesn't really have a show of force culture, which funnily, the US does not have that much of a show of force culture. There is no need, right, for a police officer to have an AK or AR strapped to their chest. So, or a SCAR, whatever, right, a long gun, because they know that they can get their weapon eventually. And realistically, a small arm is fine. But in Turkey, you'll find Uzis and ARs, AKs strapped to the police officers, and they're often an extension, it would seem, of their hands. And this comes down to how projection of force works in Turkey. Of course, saying that it's right or wrong would be inaccurate. It's a way of doing things. I don't think it's a very effective way of doing things, just as I think the US TSA is not a very effective way of doing things. However, when I go through a Turkish airport or a Turkish bus station or a Turkish train station, I don't expect things to be too long realistically. They make you put your bag on an x-ray machine, and then you're supposed to put your phone on a table in the next area, and then you go through. Of course, with this being the case, it doesn't take that long. Realistically, I think the most it has taken me is 30 minutes, which at a US airport, good luck getting through in less than an hour. But it's with this that, of course, they're used to these shows of force. And so, while I think that it's perhaps overplayed how safe it makes it, realistically, Turkey isn't that unsafe. So, I don't mind it. And of course, if you're looking for how to navigate these systems and create a global plan, an international plan, a global portfolio of passports, residencies, banks, whatever, and you are looking for someone to be on the ground to help you understand exactly what is going on in the present, feel free to reach out down below. There is a Calendly link to book a call. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like it. If you really enjoyed this video, feel free to share it. If you want to join me on my internationalization, personalization, and globalization journey, feel free to subscribe down below. This has been the Traveling Report, signing off.